these are just, it's just a normal primary. But 5 cases, 3 pupils and 2 teachers in Irvine. Oh, but oh, and Tracy, I did get my dinner in peace.
Good.
That was one of my goals today.
That makes a difference.
Oh yes, and I did manage a quick shower because I had beet pulp all down my hair, which was not attractive really. But then Felina was in a hurry and I sort of gave her feed and she lifted her head out the bucket and went, yeah. And I got beet pulp all over me.
Oh,
so,
no.
Not a good look.
Right. Next week's staffle will just all be based on who joins last, okay?
Sorry, Alan?
I'm just going to say we could have a raffle next week and see who joins us last.
Okay. Are we going to push on because we've got a lot of images to get through tonight?
I think that's a good idea. Okay, keep up, Kevin.
Right, okay, just a quick reminder. I'm not going to be too long because there's a lot of images to get through for Mary this evening. Next week, the 14th of October, is a review of the Scottish Maritime Museum images. As far as I know, we will not be hosting Kilmarnock due to the COVID, which would have been the week after. So we'll give you more details about that next week. The week after, the 21st of October, is a post-comp review from this evening's C1. That will also be on Zoom. Also that evening, it is the hand-in for C2, C3 and C4 PDIs. Okay. Just another thing, in these strange times, can I just ask you just to keep a check on the club's bulletins and programs page on the website for all the updates? That will keep you in the loop. So if you can please check that, we'll keep you in the loop that way. It doesn't take a lot. Just get on there, check it out, make sure you know what's happening. Okie doke. This evening, of course, is the first competition of the PDIs, the first competition of the new season. And our judge this evening is Mary Gibson. So I'd love to say a warm welcome to Mary. Unfortunately, we can't give her a hug and a kiss, Mary.
Oh.
So you're just going to have to look at your beautiful face, and I'm going to hand you over to you and Tracy, okay?
Okay. Right, do you want me just to start then?
Yeah, just beforehand, could I just ask everyone to mute themselves, please?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
And Andrew, I think there's still some feedback coming through because you've got 2 feeds open. Would it maybe be better to close one? Oh, can't hear us. You're muted.
Tracy, can you unmute? Can you mute his other one?
Mute this one, right? Okay.
Can I ask anyone? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can anybody hear me talking? Right.
Yes. Hey, you need to mute yourself, John.
I'm using my smartphone for the first time, and I have no idea how to do this.
There's a button with mute on it. You just have to press.
I've done it.
That's it. You've done it, John.
No, I did it for him.
Oh, well done, Tracy.
But I can't mute Andrew's phone connection. Right, he's ended it. Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Andrew. Okay, I think we're fine to go, Mary.
Okay. Well, first of all, before I disappear and the images come up, thank you very much for inviting me once again. Very fond of Irvine Club, as you know, and I'm so proud of the way you've kept going. I'm sorry I can't be with you. And one thing I'd like to mention is, as usual, I will rattle on about things you could do to images. Everything is based on Photoshop. I don't do Lightroom. And I will go on about levels, layers. And I found a good one for you, a wee what you call it, site. It's called Lenscraft, all one word, lenscraft.co.uk, and they do very good explanations about levels, layers and curves layers. And the other thing I would ask everybody to do is, please, if it's a digital, do not put a white border round it. Your eye goes to the brightest area and you may have a beautiful image with a big white border, and the eye tends to be drawn out. Those of you who are guilty of doing this will know who they are. So on that, do you think we would like to move on? And is it Alan who's doing the putting up of images?
Yes.
Okay, Alan, we'll go over to you, and we should be starting with, what was that?
It's saying here that most is disabled participant screen sharing. So can you fix that, Tracy?
Oh, God. How do you do that again? Clive?
Right, Tracy, did you go to security and allow all hosts, all participants to share?
Right, okay. Okay, Alan, you should be able to do it now.
Good. Okay.
Ah, yes. Can I get rid of the wee thing at the side? Because I'll have to look up. There we are.
Drag it
Right,
across.
we're starting off. If you can see me, I'll be looking up, because I'm looking up at my big screen that's got all my comments on it and the right glasses. Now, that's what you call eye contact. And the llama really seems to be asking a question with one ear cocked. Quite a comical fellow. The strong blue in the sky is a wee bit overwhelming. And if the saturation was just taken down a wee bit in that, I think you would be able to get more detail. You would see more detail, especially in the lower ear, because the edges are quite dark there. It's very central, but in this case it works well, and it adds to the directness of the image because it's staring right at you. It's sharp throughout and well exposed with no burnout and no block up. No burnout or blocking, sorry. Right, could we move on to Iridescent Insect, please? Well, it's said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and in this image, the author has managed to capture the finer points of the blue bottle, and there is a beauty in the iridescent body, but for many, myself included, the beauty would stop there. The author has done well to capture the insect on the flower with a clear space behind it. I don't know whether they sat for ages or were just lucky, but that clear green behind really allows it to stand out. It's removing a wee bit of the contrast in the white flowers all round would allow the blue bottle to stand out even more and further enhance the image. I think it's been well exposed, the composition is very good, and the eye is led to the insect by the space in the flowers, and the surrounding halo of flowers holds the eye onto the main subject. I think it was very well seen, very well captured, and that one was commended. And we're on to hay time, please. Now, although it says it's hay time, I'm working with two mice here, and I'm having a problem moving up. There we are, we've got it. Although it says it's hay time, I think it might have been barley time due to the colour of the crop. The author has thought about the composition, and the inclusion of the contra-flowing lines in the lower left corner adds interest to this pattern shot, and it breaks the pattern ever so slightly in that corner. A bit more of that might have been helpful. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one now. This is murder. It's been well seen and is sharp, allowing detail to be seen in the rows. Now, unless the author was standing on a very high hill, I think this is a drone image, but it's been well put together. The colour is very uniform, as is the light, which tends to make this image appear a wee bit flat, Perhaps if it had been taken at a different time of day when there were maybe some shadows, or maybe ideally what you would want is a wee red tractor right up in that top left-hand corner. So it might have been worth hanging around for a wee while. And we're on to Dumfries House. And I've just realised I've got the wrong, that's all right, we've got it now. Now, a lot of time has been taken to line up this shot. It's perfectly symmetrical. Even the flag is hanging just right. It's pin sharp and there's detail throughout, from the very front to the very top of those chimneys. There are a few areas of burnout, especially the sky at the right-hand side just beyond the house, as viewed, and the two benches, they're very white. There are some blocked up areas on the top bowl of the fountainhead and in the trees on the left. If you want to check your mono for burnt out or blocked up areas, bring up a levels layer. That's the first time you've heard it, it won't be the last. Bring up a levels layer, hold down the Alt key and click on the upper white end. Burnt out areas will show up in white. Do the same at the black end and blocked up areas will show in the black. The image, I've got the wrong thing up and I'm going to have to format this cell to get the height right because it's not got enough space. When I started to put this up tonight, it suddenly began to update Office, so it's really kind of held me up a bit. The image has black and white, but the grey tones might be slightly increased by lowering the contrast just ever so gently in the levels layer in the output one. Drag both ends in. But it's a very fine image and that one was commended. Now we're on to Leap of Faith. Just checking the height again. Leap of Faith, a very vivacious lady. She looks so cheerful and happy. The composition's good, and she's been caught with both feet off the sand, so the timing has been very good. The speed has been good. Unfortunately, the light is behind her, which leaves her face and her body in shadow. But the shadow on the ground is very good as well. The sea is the brightest part of the image, and unfortunately that draws your eye beyond her. It draws it away from her. It could be helped by lowering the contrast on the sea with a levels layer. Pull in the white and black ends on the lower slider, which is the output slider. Gently, as too much will make it a bit grey and gungy. Using the layer mask, bring the face back through, and that would give it more sort of definition. You could also lighten up her face in the upper one by moving the mid-tone slider to the left and then black it out and just bring her face through. Even seeing her face, it would be ideal if you could lighten up the whole body, but even bringing through her face would enhance the image. A good capture, but remember, always try to get the light on the main subject, unless it's something very specifically that you want it to be backlit, and we'll maybe look at that later on in one of the other images. But that was a very nice image, very good try. Right, glug. I can see why it's called glug. I wouldn't like to be in his position. Now, the triangular shape created by the man, his kayak and the oar, and the fact that they're all red really make this image. I don't know if the author waited until somebody in red came down, but it was worth it. The turbulent water has been well captured. Again, the speed of shooting is spot on, but taking down the contrast slightly on the whiter parts of the water, just behind the boat, just above and slightly to the left as viewed of the boat. That would take it down and make him stand out a bit. It would make it less intrusive. You could also lighten up the main subject, especially the hands and the face, because they're the bit of the man that holds the whole thing together. It would give him more dominance. I think the author has handled the exposure and the shutter speed very well and produced an excellent action shot, and Glug was highly commended. Now we're on to Unbowed, Unbent and Unbroken. Now this mono has a very good range of tones from white all the way to black, with only small touches of block up, which could have been lifted using a levels layer and selectively bringing these areas through to reveal further detail, especially in the lower left corner and the upper left corner. I'm sure that there's more detail down in that bit. Now, your eye is being led right through the image, right to the very back there. And that could be emphasized by dropping the contrast on the front of the image, over on the whole of the image, and then bringing that little square in the middle back through and lightening the end of the tunnel, so to speak. I would also maybe add a soft vignette. I know I said lift the black, but the black would be lifted to let the detail through, but then put on a black layer on top, just a new layer, blacken it completely, huge white brush, and then just keep dabbing at it and let it come out till it's very, very soft. And that would really focus down on that. So pin sharp throughout and a very good range of tones. That was Unbowed. Now we're moving on to A Moment to Ponder. Leaning from the window in deep in thought, this judge, I suspect it's a costume judge, really does look as if he's taking a moment to consider. There's detail throughout, but the eye is drawn to his wig. I think it dominates because it reflects the light and it's so full of interesting detail. And his white cravat is also dominant, which means that his wee face, which we should really be looking at, is kind of stuck in the middle. Dropping the contrast on the whole image, except his face, and then lightening and increasing the contrast in his face would give a better balance and help the viewer to focus on what we really should focus on in the image, which is the face and the eyes. Right, that's that one, and we're on to Out of the Dust. I'll just change the size again. We're a bit tight there. Now we've got 3 motor cross bikes, very well caught and appearing through the dust. The light on the bikes is just absolutely spot on, and it's been very well caught by the author, very well caught. The determination and concentration can actually be seen in the eyes of each rider due to them wearing clear visors. You don't get that very much now. It tends to be these, the dark visors, and you can't see the eyes. The eyes of the fellow at the back are really quite scary. He's got such a determined look in his face, and the dust makes it so atmospheric. The visor is concealed by the dust, but the trees just up in that top right-hand corner, I think they might benefit from having their contrast taken down. And the green grass, if you took the yellow out of that, I think that might sort of fade it right into the background. But I thought it was an absolutely super action shot, well seen and well caught, and was commended. Now we're going down the coast to Porton Cross Castle. I was there quite recently and fell in a puddle. Well, it was one of the wee muddy shucks, and the person who was with me kindly picked me up and then laughed for the next hour. Now this is Porton Cross Castle as we know it. Lovely brick in that castle, lovely tones. The Union Jack flying, well sorry, it's not the Union Jack, it's the Saltire flying, caught against an interesting sky, and the 2 wee fishermen just along there on the left, they just add a good sense of scale. The image is very well composed with 2/3 sky and 1/3 land, and the castle placed on the right-hand third. So composition has always been thought about, well done. Green grass, it can always appear oversaturated in images. I'm sure that it probably was that colour when you took the picture, and we'll see this in later images as well. I should have said I view them on a 26-inch ultra, a Dell Ultra Sharp, which is calibrated every 2 to 3 weeks, and your wee calibration was spot on it. So this green is showing a wee bit greeny. To make grass look a bit more natural, open up your hue and saturation and take your wee dipper, your wee tool, and just go onto the grass. It will come up as yellow. If you pull the hue slider slightly to the left, it will make it warmer, and then slightly desaturate it, and you'll get a much gentler green. The sky is lovely. I wouldn't touch the blue in the sky. I think it's super and it's lovely, because what I liked was you've got this blue and white sky. I'm trying to point with my mouse, but it doesn't work, obviously. You've got the blue and white sky and the blue and white saltire flying in it, and I think it's a very well seen, very well done image. Now we're moving on to ice flow. Now, this ice flow is very chilling. I thought it was very, very cold. It looked almost like a monster coming out. The iceberg is well placed, but might benefit from being cropped up from the bottom. If you brought it up just a wee bit, it would be placed in a more dominant position. You would have your 1/3 at the top, then you could get it down to 2/3 at the bottom with that iceberg right on that left-hand lower third. And that would, it's amazing how a small thing like that could really strengthen it. I would also suggest that a curve, just a gentle S. If you go into the curves, you'll see a straight line that runs across. Click in the middle and that locks the midtones. Go up to the white and you can move the white up a tiny bit and the black down a tiny bit, and it just gives a bit more definition. And I have a feeling that there's more to come out of the beautiful ice formation on that. But I thought it was a very, very nice image, well seen, beautiful colours, and I think these colours could also be enhanced by a gentle curves layer, and that one was commended. Now we're moving on to Reflector. I found this image quite intimidating at first. When I saw it, I went, oh, and sort of sat back. I felt as if it was coming out, so credit to the author, it really does jump out at you. I think it's very well titled, as the building really does reflect the sky and the buildings around it. I'm not sure about the building on the right. I don't think it adds to, I know it kind of balances it, but if it were to be cropped, if that building were to be cropped out, it would bring that beautiful sort of curve straight onto the right-hand third. And I think it would make it even more dominant and more threatening. Maybe it wasn't meant to be threatening, but I think it is. There's plenty of interest in the sky, and I think it was captured at just the right time of day. The reflections on the left-hand side of the building are beautiful, and that one was highly commended. And we're on to blue. If I'm going too slow or too fast, could somebody let me know? I don't know how you'll let me know, but just let me know. Right, blue. The water drops in the flower certainly add interest, especially those ones that are just on the edge of the lowest leaf, almost at the stem. There are two beautiful wee drops, and the one just off the middle, just at the side. They're just capturing the light. It's very well positioned in the frame, and it is pin sharp throughout. The one thing I would say is it's a very delicate bloom, and it might have been better suited to a gentler background. The black is fine, but I somehow feel that something, maybe a black that's not as black, I suppose that would be a grey, I would be thinking, but something gentler in the background. But it's been beautifully caught, beautiful detail everywhere, and a really nice image, and that was commended. Now we're on to Peace Brother. Oh, this made me smile. What a happy image. You can feel the peace and love emanating from them. Now, unfortunately, I think the author has used an effect, and it has really, really brought out the yellow tones in the background. It's created some texture, and it threatens, you threaten to overwhelm the main subjects. Taking down the yellow in a hue saturation layer, just not changing the hue, just the saturation, just taking it down, might allow them to stand out from the background, as would perhaps modifying any effect that's been used. The skin tone, it's had an effect on the skin tone on the lady's neck and legs, because it doesn't really match the skin tone on her face, which is very nice. But the neck and the front of the legs, I think they've got that effect on them. So the author has managed to catch the character of this colourful, overwhelmed them with the effect. I'm saying him, sorry, I should say, but they have slightly overwhelmed the couple by using whatever effect it was. So Modernity is up next. Now, this is a dark and quite a moody image with the angle of the building. I think it suggests that it's defending itself against an attack from the clouds, which are very white. Overall, the image is very dark, and although it has both black and white ends, it lacks tones of grey. I think lightening the building, not the sky, just the building, I'm sure there's more texture to come out in the sort of bits between the windows, and it might give, because the building at the moment is fighting against the cloud. I know it says, you know, it's against nature, but I think nature's winning a bit too much. So I think if the building were lightened, you would get more grey tones and it would be a better mono image. Now we're on to Decommissioned. Now, this is an image which is documenting perhaps the demise of the Scottish oil industry. The image is well composed using thirds, and the houses in the background provide a sense of scale. The rig and the village behind have been well caught in the light, allowing them to stand out. There's a lot of green in the sky. I was in a forgiving mood because I could see from the left-hand side, you can almost see it as if it's rain just drifting in, and just above the village there's that wee glimmer of sky that isn't quite as dark. There are blacks and there are whites, and there are good tones throughout, and the good thing is the main image, the main part of the image, the oil rig, is pin sharp throughout. The underside of it, I think there's more detail in there that could be brought out in the underside of the legs. But it's sharp, it's very well lit, and it tells a story, and it captures a bit of history and records it for eternity. So that one was commended. Now we're on to, I think it's Angera, and I think it's in Italy. Could be wrong, but I think it could be Italy. And I really liked this image. It was sort of up there for a while. It's a well seen image, and I love the story it tells. You don't need to see their faces. Their body language suggests that they're old friends, and their meeting place, possibly a harbour wall. I think they're looking back across the main town. I think that suggests that they're local. One may have come on the bike, which adds another dimension to the story. The image may have been taken later in the day, as suggested by, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to make this bigger again, because when it's reconfigured the whole of office, it's reconfigured everything to the same height. There we are. Suggested by the shadows and the warm colour of the image. I don't think you would necessarily take away that warmth. I think it's all part of the story. And if you look at the fellow on the right's ear, it's quite a natural colour. So I think that the light on it is quite good. It could be modified if you wanted. You could remove some of the red or yellow, whichever is the dominant colour. As I said, I think the light adds to the story. It's not perfect. There's a highlight on the boat to the left, which is really burnt out. But this doesn't detract from the overall feeling and from the overall story of capturing a quiet moment between two old friends. And that one was highly commended. Now we're on to the Blue Bridge. I believe there's a competition at the moment to see what colour they should paint it. I don't know what colour would be better or worse. Now, it's a good colour combination, this, very good, mainly reds, blues and whites. The car trails have been well handled, and it has been taken when there is still some detail in the sky. You can see there are clouds that have obviously been moving as the trails have been moving. I think there might have been a wind that night as the slow shutter speed has captured movement in the treetops. Perhaps taking two images, one with a normal shutter speed and then one to capture the trails, and then stacking them as you would do in insect photography. That might have avoided the trees, because I like the movement in the sky, I like the movement of the trails, but the trees they don't quite fit, and the ones beyond are much sharper. So I would have tried taking two images. This might be the correct view of the bridge when you're standing in real life facing it. But if you were to flip it, in the west we read from left to right. In this image, we're moving from right to left, which is awkward. The eye tends to go up the bridge and then down. You want those lovely trails to lead you in right up to the bridge and the beautiful starlights above it. So I would suggest flip the image and see what you think. I think it would give a lovely lead-in line, and it would lead you straight to the bridge and the stars. Good use of the shutter speed and a good choice of the time of day. Now we're moving to Kayaks in the Mist. Now this is quite a minimalist shot of the two kayaks, and they are disappearing into the mist. The buoy or marker on the left is slightly distracting, and I think it could be removed without damaging the image. It's a pity there hadn't been 3 kayaks, but that's okay, we can cope with 2. Using a levels layer to lift the midtones on the kayaks, just that area around the kayaks, just with a gate, put it all black, and then just a big soft brush and just boom onto that area. It would take the eye to them, it would add light to them, and it might lift it and add more tones. And I think it works very, very well in the letterbox format. Now we're moving to Out of Ayrshire. I'm not quite sure why it's Out of Ayrshire. Maybe it was Lanarkshire, or maybe it was Dumfries. There we are. Beautiful colours in the sky with the silhouette of the roofs forming a base that holds the whole thing in. We know where it is. We've got a place to stop us going out of it. The main roof and the 3 main trees are very central. But if you cropped in from either end, it would be very difficult. And you might lose as much of the delicate toning in the sky as you would gain from a better composition. But I think had the author moved left at the time of taking, they might have created a separation between the main chimney and the largest tree trunk on that big main roof in the middle. And that would still keep the tones in the sky, and it would still keep that lovely tall chimney with the smoke coming out. It would also place the main roof and the 3 trees in a more dominant position, and would have created a stronger composition and therefore a stronger image. But beautiful colours, really like that. So that's Out of Ayrshire. And now we're moving on to Of Iron and Glass, a very strong pattern shot. Good symmetry and pin sharp throughout. There are a few small areas that are blocked up, but lifting the mid-tones in a levels layer would bring them out and add further interest. I'm talking about right up at the top and the big main beams that form the main lead-ins coming down. I'm sure there's more detail up there. I'm sure that could be brought out. And they lead you beautifully into that big main window. But your eye's not held there because it's the same as everywhere else. You could simply lighten that square at the bottom, just lift up the midtones on it and only on it, and that would take you in. But better still, if you dropped the contrast on the whole image and brought that back through and then lightened it slightly, you would be led straight into that and it would become a much stronger composition. You would have a definite focal point and the eye would rest on that rather than wander around the image looking for somewhere to rest on. Now, talking of eyes, we're going on to golden eye. Now, the eye and the beak are sharp, but unfortunately the rest of the wee bird's a wee bit soft. We need, in nature photography, I do a bit of nature stuff and I don't go below 7.1. I know there may be nature photographers there who are saying, oh, you have to go down, you have to go. You don't really have to go down if you've got the right light. It's all about setting up. And if you'd had a sort of better aperture, the angle it's on, you would have got everything sharp right down to these lovely small feathers. But unfortunately, he has a beautiful golden eye, but it's overpowered by the stronger yellow in the background. Using a hue and saturation level, you could selectively reduce that yellow in the background and that would let the bird stand out. Now, if you flipped the image, again, I'm talking about horizontally, so that the bird, instead of reading from sort of the middle of your image down to the right of the image, flip it over and that tail would lead you in and lead you up to that golden eye, which would then be on the top third, the top right third, and that would be a better composition. If you've got the space, try and straighten it up as well. Put it into a crop and rotate it to try and get a straight line where that big bar is. Take the yellow out of it, you can't do anything about the burnt out area, but flip it over, straighten it up, take the yellow out, and that would be a very nice wee image. Now, this is one, flying drone. Now, is this a drone captured by a drone? I'm not sure. It's very sharp. It's we can read its name. It's got a very, very well diffused background, and it doesn't interfere. It's quite tight in the frame, I would say that, and there's no room for that drone to move into. I mean, it's going to go battering into the side there. A wee bit of space in front, old-fashioned on that, and some of you saying, oh God, we've heard that before. Well, if you've heard it before, try it. Wee bit of space in the front to move into. It's a good angle which suggests upward flight, but a bit more tilt would have allowed all four rotors to be seen and perhaps all in motion, and it might have created a more exciting and slightly less static image. I think if you're going to do a drone, try and pan, get the background panned behind you so that it looks as if it's flying through the skies. As it is, it's a very competent image of a drone, but it's not really going anywhere. Okay, we're moving on to the Lady Isle Light. This is another dark image, quite foreboding. I think you could lift the midtones across the whole image. I think it would make the lighthouse more visible, and it would show more definition between the isle and the sea. You don't really see that it's sitting on an isle. Well, you can see there's a slight hump and the sea doesn't do that. But lifting it ever so slightly overall, you would get more of a definition between the sea and the isle. The rocks in the foreground, they're very heavy, very black, and I don't know if we need them all. I would suggest a rather drastic crop in this one. Crop it right up until you have, until the sea, the horizon is on the lower third. So you've got a third, another third that's on the horizon, and then only a third of the sea. And you'll just get the top of these dark rocks that stick out into the sea. And that would take away the very heavy bit at the bottom. Then I might come in from the left, right in here. I know you're losing a bit of that nice sky, but if you try that and it balances out, you'll move that lighthouse onto a more dominant position, and you might end up with a really nice letterbox image, because I'm sure that the quality is there in that image to be able to crop in like that. If you now I'm saying crop up, crop in from the left, and then I'm saying flip it horizontally, and you've got an automatic read-in line with the rocks that are sticking in from the side. I know it sounds drastic, but really, seriously, have a go at it, and you might be surprised at how nice that image would be with a better balance. Now, we're moving on to minimal. Oh yes, minimal by name and minimal by nature, and much more difficult to produce than might be thought. It's precisely in the middle of the image, which would not normally work, but in this case, I think it does. The lighting and exposure have been very well handled, and the author has avoided both burning out the whites or blocking up the blacks. I also like the fact that you can see right across the mug or jug or whatever it is. You can see to the other side, you can see the rim all the way around, and you can see a slightly brighter light just on the edge. The shadowed reflection is very nice. It's an image that really would be lovely in a very modern house hanging on the wall. In fact, I think it's an image made to be hung on a wall. Now we're moving on to dog tired. Oh, I think this wee dog, it just made me laugh. Another well-balanced mono image which lives up to its title. The dog appears to be sort of looking at the photographer out of the corner of its eye, as much as if to say, just get on with it. The whole body pose is so natural, and there's a very good range of tones. There's a very small lighter area just to the left of the nose. It may have been there naturally, but it does eventually make you look at it. So it could have been darkened down, and then the eyes themselves would have been more expressive if they were slightly lightened, and the contrast on them just raised a wee bit. I thought it was a lovely image. I thought the detail in the fur on the dog and in its paws and the whole flop, and the sort of spottedness of the dog, and the fact he wasn't a fancy dog. He was just a tired dog. I really enjoyed looking at that image, and that one was highly commended. Now we're moving to low tide. And it's low tide at Porton Cross, and we're round the other side now, and we're looking at the harbour. It's nice to see the harbour so busy. It must have been, sort of sometime in the summer. I've tried to take this picture before, and that house on the left-hand side, it just always kind of annoys me, because you sort of either miss the castle or you miss a boat. The colours are beautiful. The grass is much better in this image than it was in one of the other images. I'm not sure why it is. Maybe a different type of camera. And the sky, again, has plenty of interest. There is a main boat. There are 5 boats, 3, 5, they say, uneven numbers. It's a pity that hadn't been in its own for once. It would have been better. The other boats are not looking as nice. They're on their side or kind of cobbled over. But it's a very good image. It's been well exposed. It's sharp from front to back. There's good recession in the hills over towards the islands. And I think that suggests that the authors made very good use of the camera settings. So an interesting image, a memory of a summer's day. So I think it's a very competent and very well handled image. And now we're moving on to Walter. I'll give him some more space. It's shortened the space again in this one. There we are. A very attractive puppy with soulful eyes. They really draw the viewer in. However, as the dog is placed, again, we're talking about this reading. We read from left to right. The eye goes straight up to the face and is held in the face, and the rest of his body and his tail don't really get much attention. If the image were to be flipped horizontally, the eye would then travel from the perfect lead-in, which is the tail, right up to his head and rest on the eyes. The tail and the body are not just quite as sharp, especially the tail, as the head and the eyes. But a wee change of aperture might overcome that wee depth of field issue. And I think perhaps if he was in a less busy rug, the rug slightly detracts from his paws. So I think a less busy rug would help Walter. But Walter was commended. Now we have, is it a bird? Oh yes, another great storytelling image. I suppose this might have been a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get as close to a red arrow in flight. Good grief, you can see every detail underneath that. And the pilot, if you were further up the hill, you'd be able to see him. I think taking some contrast out of the road sign, it's good to know where you were, but the road sign's very, very white and obviously very shiny because of the sun that day. I think if you took that out, some contrast out of that, and then lighten the red arrow and lighten up and maybe add a wee bit of contrast to it, it would help him, it would help it to stand out, because your eye keeps being drawn back not only to the sign but to the very brightly dressed watchers. I think they're all cyclists. But I think the author has exposed the image well. It's pin sharp and it's a fantastic reminder of a very special day. And we'll move on to Bacardi ad. Now, I didn't get the Bacardi ad thing, I'm sorry. I don't watch telly much, so I've maybe missed something, but I thought it was very creative. I thought there was great imagination and an excellent use of the depth of field. The image might benefit from dropping the contrast overall, just the whole thing, drop the contrast, but then bring through the main hat and tabletop, that just a line across the middle just to make that sing out. It would further emphasise the depth of field and make the main subject stand out more. Another option might be to slightly desaturate the background, leaving only the main hat and glasses with the full colour in them. I thought it was a very clever image and well thought out, well composed, and that one was commended. And now we're moving on to give Sabrina a bit more space. Yeah. Sabrina. Now, a black cat in a very large black space, which almost works. I'm a fan of empty space. I've always liked images that have an empty space. I like where the cat's positioned. The front of the cat's very well lit, showing its beautifully coloured eyes, snowy white chest, the paws. There's also a slight definition between his legs, his back leg, and the side of the can, the side of the background. However, there's a square of light. It's hitting the stool behind where he's sitting, and it tends to draw your eye down. And you look at the cat, and then you go down and think, well, what is that? Down and what? The way the light is hitting, it's almost like another step. Perhaps, now, I don't do that much studio work, and the only studio work I've done sort of recently is with Ross McElvey over in Ireland, and he's one for all natural light and just one main light. But I think a silver reflector on the right-hand side, to the side of the cat, might have thrown up just enough light to bring out some of the detail round about the side, the back of the cat. because I think this has potential to be a really, really lovely image. But that that bit of the stool that's shining out so brightly, it's just a bit off-putting. I might even have been tempted just to clone that out and try to lift the cat up a wee bit. But I think it's a very, very good idea. I think it's worth revisiting. And hats off to the author who managed to get a cat to sit still for that length of time. But I would recommend, if you're into lighting, you want something to maybe have a look at the lighting tutorials by Ross McKelvey on YouTube. Very, very interesting indeed. Okay, and now we're going to, I think it's 5 into, oh, sorry, I'm trying to format and I've done the wrong thing. 5 into one corner won't go. And I completely agree with that. That's better. It doesn't help. Now this is the second motocross image we've had. It's well captured, but it's just lacking the atmosphere of the first. There's no dust and there's no muck, which makes it better for the riders. The riders will enjoy it better, but it's not very good for the photographers. The background's been, the contrast has been dropped, which makes these riders really zing out. The colours, and especially in their helmets, fantastic. You can see some of the eyes, but some of them have on dark visors. But if you look closely at the rider at the very back of the pack, I don't know where the red reflection is coming from, or maybe those are his real eyes, but they look as if they're glowing red, sheer frustration at being at the back of the pack. The image has been well exposed, it's been well composed, and there's just enough space for the riders to move into. There are a couple of feet just going out, and you see those feet in the front guys, the red and the orange bikes. So it would be interesting to know if all 5 made it safely around that corner. Right, and now we're going to Maggie May, and I'm just going to move across for a moment and open the cat flap to let the cat in, because it's closed to stop the pups going out. Right, could we move to Maggie May, or are we having a break?
Can we...
Sorry, people keep sending me messages, I get distracted.
What's wrong?
We keep getting messages from Tracy and they get distracted. Sorry about that.
Oh, right.
Maybe.
We're actually, yes, we're at Maggie May. Sorry, Tracy, you were saying?
Yeah, if we could maybe stop for a break round about past for about 15 minutes.
I've no idea what time it is just now. Right, yes. That's us at number 35 and we have 67 to get through. Would we stop at 40?
Yeah, that's fine.
If that's it, sort of within the time limit as well.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I didn't realise that some of you would see me gesticulating wildly. I've closed down that wee bit so I can see the images. Right, I'll close that bit down and I'll carry on. And this is Maggie May. I think Maggie May's image has been taken late in the day with the sunset. I think that might account for the orange tint that she has. I do have greys. I've had greys most of my life and I've never had one quite that colour. So I'm in the wrong mouse again. She's placed off centre and she's on a slight angle. It might have been better if the space around her allowed to go back to the original, to crop in and to rotate it slightly so that you straighten up her face. Just get her straight and then maybe go in a bit and just have the horse's head. Just stick to the horse's head. Desaturating, probably it'll be both yellow and red tones, would maybe create a more realistic colour, and lightening up her eyes would give her character. It's just that she doesn't look well to me, that wee horse, and it made me a wee bit sad to look at her. But I think you could do more with her. Just go in, straighten her up, and take away the yellow and the red, and she would look an awful lot better. Now we're on to Jew's Harp. give him some more size as well. I wish they wouldn't do updates just before you're wanting to use the thing. There we are. Now the juice harp. Now this is just character. It's just all over it. It's a beautifully taken image. It's so sharp, it's so clear, and the eyes, everything about him is fantastic. His face tells 1,000 stories, and so do his eyes. It's pin sharp, and every line and wrinkle can be seen. Even the small chain on his belt and the fastener for his braces. It's always difficult if you're taking a portrait and somebody's got glasses on. But in this case, they don't detract at all. They seem to add to the image. It just suits him having those wee sort of steel-rimmed glasses on. The guitar at the side and the lower microphone down in the corner suggests that he also plays the guitar, and the wording at the side tells us where he is. The one thing that I felt let it down slightly was that very, very bright blue background. It's so bright, it sort of overwhelms the man, and the stage lighting has made him look very red. If the blue was desaturated and the red was desaturated ever so slightly, it would make the colours much more natural looking, and it would make what is a very good image into a first class image. So that one was highly commended. And we're on to, now, is it Magellanic penguins. Now, it's a very good composition, a good choice of depth of field, which ensures that this youngster is standing out. Background is diffused, but still allows us to see enough of the natural habitat and where they are. It also shows the way the beach sort of goes down in sort of steps almost down to the sea. Maybe a wee bit more detail would have helped, especially with the adult one. Now, I know that they come from South America and their adult plumage is really stunning. If you just see the adult who's out of focus to the left of the main subject, they're so beautiful. They've got big white stripes around their eyes and black eyes and almost like a pinny on at the front. Very handsome. I think the juvenile in this image is just getting his adult coat and is looking out to sea and contemplating what his future might be once his full plumage comes in. A very good natural history image, well seen and well captured. Now we're moving on to Feed Me. The background has been very well diffused. It's totally non-intrusive, but the colours in it are very complementary. The size of the branch is appropriate to the size of the birds, and the birds are sharp. The parent's tail is just going off. That's neither here nor there. They've been caught at just the right moment, just as the parent is placing the food in the juvenile's beak. The juveniles always look so big against the adult birds at that stage because they're all fluffed up. Now again, I'm going back to the left to right. If the image was flipped horizontally, it would read better from left to right, and your eye would be taken up. Instead of having to go up and back down, you would just gently flow straight into the image and land on the birds. A bit more space around the birds, especially maybe at the top end, would have maybe improved the image. But I think it's a very, very good capture. It's been, depth of field is absolutely spot on, birds are spot on, exactly the right moment, and that one was commended. Now we're going to Lalrati. I think that's its name, Lalrati, end of line. Now it's not a full-size train, so it must be in a park somewhere, maybe one for children, I'm not sure, although there's an adult driving it. It's a steam train, and I do like steam trains. The lower part of this image is quite dark in some areas, and I really feel that just between the green body and the undercarriage, I think there's more detail in there that might come out. Maybe not. I think it's been cut off a wee bit short at the front because there's a stopper there that, and I think we're missing something that's sticking out at the front. I'm not sure what that possibly could be. It's been well exposed and it's sharped out, but really it's a reminder shot. It will take you back. I mean, it is well exposed. The colours are lovely, but it is a reminder of a lovely day out. Now we're moving on to, I've got the wrong mouse again, to Garden Blooms. Oh, well done, Alan. You were slightly ahead of me there. There's a lot going on in this image. I think that main flower is beautiful. And I think that if you cropped it in, just crop it into a square, put that right in the middle of the square and take some contrast off around it. Add some contrast to the main flower. That would make a beautiful wee image. There's just, you come to that flower and yes, it's well placed, but there's so much going on everywhere else. And some are in focus and some are out of focus. So if you were to just hone in on that one, straighten it a wee bit, nice square bit round it, that would absolutely sing. And I think I would really, really work in that. You might even slightly desaturate the petals and the flowers behind it to let it really, really sing out, because it's absolutely beautiful, that viewing. So worth going back to and worth revisiting. Now, that's us. Is that us?
That's fine, Mary. If you want to stop at that, that's number 40, okay?
Right, I'll try and find you, Kevin. I can't see you. Oh, yes.
Okay.
I've lost. That's it. I've got it now. There we are. I've got the wee thing back.
Well, if we say 8:45, is that okay with you, Mary?
That's ideal because the puppies are just beginning to waken up.
Okay,
and the
no
cats has
problem.
come in. So
Okay,
that'll be right. That's fine. What do? I just leave this as it is?
Yeah, that's fine. You can mute yourself if you want.
I can mute myself. Right. Oh, there we are. Yes. I see that face live.
Right, are we nearly ready to go? Everybody back?
Yes. I'll block that one down.
Tracy, there, yeah?
Hide thumbnails.
Okay, I'll carry on then because we've still got quite a few to get through.
Okay, everyone can mute themselves again, please.
27 to get through now. Everyone ready? And we're on to a cloud view. Now, a longer shutter speed has allowed movement in the clouds and the reflections in the water, and I think that really does enhance this image. It's very sharp, there's detail throughout, and there's a good range of tones from black to white. There's a small area of burnout in the sky, which may have been exacerbated with the shutter speed, I'm not sure, but it's just slightly to the right of the crane, and it does tend to draw your eye away from that bridge. The bridge is lovely, the light's just hitting the bridge very nicely. The white railing on the right forms a very good lead-in, and once again I would say try and flip it, because then your lead-in would come left to right. I know I'm going on about this quite a lot, but it was a topic that was discussed at a judges' thing quite recently. So I think the sky may have been darkened, as there's a wee bit of whiteness above some of the trees above that railing on the right-hand side, but overall a very competent mono. The next one we have is pine cone. A very simple, oh, that one doesn't work like that. A very simple image, but I would think it would be deceptively hard to light. The authors managed to capture almost every small detail. The shadow in itself is interesting, but at the same time slightly distracting. And I wonder if placing another light, I know there's been one coming from the left, but maybe one coming from the right, would give you a much purer image, and it would have nothing, no distractions, no shadow, just that pine cone in the middle. And I think this is another one that would be very good hanging on a wall. Fungi cluster. Well seen and well captured, a cluster of fungi. The detail is amazing. You can see it's almost like wee hairs all over the top of them. Once again, we're back to the greens. They're very strong in the background, and the fungi's got quite delicate tones in it, which the green is tending to overshadow. There may be some true green in there, and there may be some yellow. So into hue and saturation with your dropper, check whether it's a yellow or a green, and just desaturate it slightly. If it's a yellow, warm it up by taking the hue slider slightly to the left, warm it up, then desaturate. And if it's green, just take the saturation down a bit. That would really allow the fungi to stand out. Remember to bring the fungi back. Don't lose the yellow in the fungi, because the fungi is really, really lovely. Well captured, and a lovely composition as well. The Amalia Glacier, a very impressive vista. A difficult shot to expose because there's so much black and there's so much white. Now, the sky has been well handled, but it has come at the expense of the actual glacier mountain, the mountain on the left and on the right. They have become very dark and we've lost detail. If your camera has the capability, then set it to take 3 separate exposures, one bang on, one under and one over. And you can set it, different cameras are different, but you can set it up so that you hold it and you just click it and it will very quickly do 1, 2, 3. So when you get it back, you've got the sky exposed correctly, the bottom part exposed correctly, and the darker areas, they're exposed. Then you can stack them and bring the right bits through. I would also think it might be enhanced by the glacial ice at the bottom that's just reaching into the water. There are beautiful sort of tones in there, lovely sort of turquoisey tones. And if that was lifted, it would really make it sing out. I think you could really work on that image. And the rock on the lower left side, it would come up as well. You might also get a wee bit more detail just above the glacial sort of flow on the right hand side. But I don't know whether adding black and would help with the definition of the mountains above. But it certainly is. It's it's a view of something that we may not see again, and it's a record of climate change. So an image well worth having taken. And climbing up even higher, we are on a stairway to heaven. Now this is an interesting and almost abstract image, looking up through the dome to the sky above. The outer ring of wood and the circle of lights just beyond it. I think if they were to be slightly lifted, excuse the dogs in the background, if they were to be slightly lifted, it would form an even better sort of lead-in. It's a difficult image to compose, but I think the author has done extremely well, using the main staircase going across and then the 2 crossover staircases to lead you right up through that. And because it's a sort of oval shape, it leads you right up and right up into the sky above. I think that's been very well handled. A difficult one to take and a difficult one to compose, but the author's done very well. Now we're on to one that is called Later. And I think the letterbox presentation suits this very, very well. There's good recession in the hills beyond, and the small clouds do add a bit of interest, but I think there's been a slower shutter speed perhaps used to smooth out the water, which has caused a wee bit of blurring in the clouds. The colour in the sky is beautiful. It's really vibrant and it's really hot against the cold, and the juxtaposition of the coldness of the sea and the hills and in the bright sky. I thought there might have been more of the sky colour in the sea, but perhaps not. I think, oh, pup. I think a pup thinks it's lost. I would suggest trying a curves layer. Bring it up, lock it in the middle on the mid-tone and the wee dot in the middle, and then gently lift the white end where it crosses that white line. Just lift it up a wee tiny bit. I think that might bring out the colour in the sky and give it a wee bit more depth in the sky. But well seen and well taken, lovely colours. Now we're moving to, I think we're going to the Netherlands now. I could be wrong, but I suspect it is in the Netherlands. Zandvoort. And I think it was definitely a very windy and possibly a chilly day. There's lots of detail in the image, from the pots on the decking to the windsurfers beyond. The waves are high, and it may be that the surfer on the right is hidden by them. But the problem is that the viewer looks around, sees the wee one on the left hanging onto his sail, looks at the sail on the right, and there's nobody. Is he there? Is he drowned? Is that him sticking out at the side of a plant? It's just not very clear, but it tends to take attention away. And that part of the image doesn't really do much. All the interest is over on the left-hand side. So I would suggest a crop right down the side of the pole, and that would take that bit out, and then it would move the people into a very good and very dominant position. And I think that would really improve the image. The top of it is very light compared to this left-hand corner, and perhaps just slightly darkening the top of the image would balance it, and you would get better tones in it. There certainly is black and white. Sorry, excuse me. But darkening that sky might bring out some more detail. But it's a very good image, a very interesting image. And now we're moving to along the coast. Now, initially, it looked as if there was a boat in the sky. But when you look closely, it is in fact a weather vane. It's very suitable for the location. Excuse me one moment, I'm going to move a dog. That's it, really after these books. My apologies. It's a weather vane, and I think there may be more detail in the wee boat itself. So if you just used a layer to lift up the midtones but only brought through the boat, you might get more detail there. It's quite difficult to move through the image because you're stopped every so often, first of all by the rocks, then by the breakwater, then by the horizon, which is fine, but then there are clouds, bands of clouds in the sky as well, which tend to bring you back down. I think at the time of taking, if the author had moved to the left and tried to get a slightly different angle with the weather vane more towards the left, it might have made the bench clear those rocks, because there's lovely detail in the bench and we're just not quite seeing it because of the angle it's been taken from. If it's close by, visiting again. Now we're on to Lauren. Give her more spaces there. So, okay. Now this portrait initially has amazing impact, and I'm sure it would be the pride and joy of any parent. However, in a competition context, on returning to the image, at first it seemed ethereal, and then coming back again, it seemed slightly unreal. The figure is very central, and I think that might be to maximise the very well-handled lighting effect on the background, which forms almost a circle around the child. The flowers are beautifully placed, but they tend to vie with her face and her skin tone because they're so similar and they're of exactly the same level of brightness. And they tend to draw your eye as they come round down to the skin tone on her arm. Now, I would imagine she's been sunbathing, maybe with a longer sleeve top on, but the skin tone in the arm changes quite dramatically coming down towards the elbow, which again can catch the eye and draw you down there. The eyes are compelling and beautiful, but the skin texture on her face, it appears unnaturally smooth. The colours throughout are harmonious and complementary, and a great deal of care has been taken with the setup. Her hair is hanging to perfection. There's not one hair out of place. A beautiful portrait, but just lacking a wee touch, a wee sign of the child's own character and personality. But Lauren was highly commended. Now we're on to Digger. A very vibrant image. And I think here we will see where the green can go wrong. Now, a difficult image to expose for, quite like the mountain in a different way. It's a black and white dog, and it's hard. And with a dog, you can't really take 2 or 3 images because they always twitch and move. Although Digger looks as if it would be very well behaved. But there is detail in the black coat, tiny bit of block up on his back, and a wee bit of burnout just above the eyes on the white. But the main issue I have is the green, the grass. I'm sure it might have been that, as green as that, but it doesn't look as good in the image. So once again, into hue saturation, take the hue down just to warm it up a tiny bit, and then take the saturation down, and then Digger will be able to stand out. And the red ball, perfect choice of a colour of ball. If you're going to take a picture of a dog, it really draws you right in. So it's a picture that any owner would be very proud of. Now we're moving on to the scented garden, or scented garden. Now in this one, there's a juxtaposition of textures. There's the very rough texture of the slab, which acts as a counterpoint to the clear and smooth glass or jar that's sitting on it, and the preciseness of that shadow. Whilst the slab's all jaggy and rugged, it's very, very definite, the shadow, very smooth. There are grey tones in black, but there's not really a true white, although the sticks may look white, they're not really up at the white end, and that's the only bit of white we have, apart from maybe a few dots of reflection on the glass. Lightening the bottle and maybe the middle of the shadow where there are the really nice reflections. I think that that might bring up more shades of grey. The colour of the bottle and the colour of the slab might have been different, but when it's been turned into a mono, it just doesn't work as well. It tends to be grey throughout, and the white there is not strong enough, and there's not enough black. So we have a large area in the middle that is mainly grey. So I like the idea, the juxtaposition of rough and smooth, but may have worked better in colour, that one. Now, painting the battlements. Now, this was an intriguing image, and at first I thought, oh yeah, it's a man, and then I looked at it again and again. It's not something you would see every day, and he's very well framed against the sky, and the image is held in the left and in the bottom by the actual walls of the castle. I would take it as these are battlements. I like the idea that the man and his brush and bucket, they form a triangle, and he's standing on a triangle, and he's painting a triangle. So the shape almost mirrors the shape of the battlement below it. There's a black and white end, plenty of grey tones, and the exposure has been well handled. The man's captured at just the right moment, sticking that brush into the bucket. And I think it's a very, very good storytelling image, and that one was commended. And now we're reflecting the old in the new. We are. I feel there's a slight issue of perspective here. I don't know if that could be pulled over, because I feel that it's maybe leaning just a bit that way, and then this one's coming in, so it maybe needs pulled out. If you have space in the original, try it. But I do like the idea of this very modern glass building with the lovely architecture reflected in it. I don't know if the bit at the left-hand side, the lowest part reflects it terribly much, and that maybe could be taken off, which may help with the perspective. I'm not sure of that. I sometimes really would love to take them into Photoshop and start guddling with them, but I don't do that because it's your image. It's not for me to do anything with. So I would be tempted to take that bit off, and then you might be able to get this as a sort of straighter, slightly straighter image, but the perspective did throw me off. I think it's a very good idea. Beautiful sky above and beautiful sky reflected. But what have I said, anything else? Yes, I just said it's been very well, the exposure's been very well handled throughout. But I would think a wee crop might be in order. Now, Curiosity. I think this is a fun image of 3 curious calves. Well, it's said that Curiosity killed the cat, but hopefully the curiosity of the calves didn't kill the photographer. It has been known, and I would, I would suggest to anyone that you do not enter a field of, well, these look quite young, but not that young, and you might be entering a field of what they call bull beef, which are really young bulls. They're not bullocks, they are still entire, so they therefore still have the aggressive nature. So please be very aware when you go into a field with trees in it. In this case, the sort of distortion of the lens works well, especially for the one in the middle. The other two look as if they've maybe had a wee dram and they're sort of leaning in a bit. But the actual one in the middle and the nose and the way it's sort of been foreshortened, I think that's fantastic. I might actually have gone for just taking that one and tried to get it without its 2 pals and just concentrated on that face because there's so much character in it. The ear tags nowadays are always a distraction, but we always have to have them. But you could actually have cloned them out and just concentrated on that face. And I really think that would have been a stronger image with the one rather than its 2 pals. But please do be careful, but it is a lovely image. Colourful. Now, what are we on to now? Yes, it's the flower. Now, this is lovely, but normally we would say you don't have the focal point in the middle. But in this case, I think you want the focal point in the middle. I would say bring it in a little bit from the left, just to balance it up so that that beautiful centre part was really zinging out at you. The yellow sort of leaf petals round about, if they were slightly darkened, I suspect there would be even more detail available in there. The colours are complementary, and it's a beautiful image, but I would just be tempted to crop them in, not terribly much, but just bring it into a square with that right in the middle. But it's been very, very well handled and beautifully exposed. So well done to the author for that one in a macro shot. And we're moving on to Sunset over Solway. Okay, now that's better. I thought this was a very calming image of the sunset, and again it suits the letterbox shape. Now the lower part of the image, it's quite dark. It doesn't add anything. So at the moment the horizon is really on the middle. So I would suggest that you take the bottom right up until the horizon comes on to the lower third. And that gets rid of a lot of the sort of blackness at the bottom. I would then also suggest that the white sign on the left-hand side and the black shape are not required either. So I would bring it in from the left until you get to where you've just got that wee point that's sticking out. And that would get rid of that big white sign, which I think would make it a much, much stronger image. I know there's a crane there that you don't really want to see, but you can't help it, it's there. I mean, it's part of it. Once again, I would suggest a curve to try and bring some more fieriness out of the sky. Beautiful reflected colour in the sea. I wouldn't try and lighten the bottom bit because it's soft and subtle, but that sky, I think a curves layer might just make it pop out. Click it in the middle, lift that white end a tiny bit, and you might see that just come zooming out. Then blacken it out and just put a big brush straight across there and lift it out. And I think that would be a lovely image, but a very, very nice colour and lovely, lovely tones. Now we're on to Milltown, which needs a lot more space. I think a wee bit of chat about this one. Now, this is a fine group of old mills which may have been converted or are about to be converted into housing, judging by the new builds that are sort of on the periphery of it. Now, I think there's been an effect used on this. I don't think, perhaps I know there's been an effect used on this, and I suspect it may have been HDR. Now, HDR has the unfortunate effect of raising the saturation, especially in yellows, and I think that's what's happened here. The grass and the trees in the foreground and background have really become quite vibrant. And the grass at the front, at the lower front, it really does form a barrier. You get to that and you go, oof. You get to the trees, you go, oof. And then the beautiful buildings in the middle are sort of forgotten because you go on to more up at the top. Really, it needs the yellows taken out of it. Almost, right, desaturate them right down. That might take colour out of the mill because there's lovely stone in there. So you would have to bring that back through. I think this image, it's sharp from, well, maybe not the grasses, but the trees right back. It's perfectly sharp. I don't know why you would want to over sharpen it like that using HDR. If you're going to use it selectively. Only use it on the buildings, on the roofs, to bring out some detail there, but not on the surrounding vegetation. It's just gone a wee bit too strong. I think you could sharpen that in so many other ways. And you could double sharpen perhaps the mill if you want the stone to stand out. But please, if you're going to use HDR, be very aware of the fact that it does cause certain colours to become oversaturated. So use it gently. Okay, we'll move on to Fire Breath. Now, very popular, the Kelpies. When I read the title, I thought, oh, this will be fire coming out. But I now see what the author's done. He's used the burned out cloud up here to appear as if it's blowing flames out, which is very clever, really. But the Kelpie itself's a bit grey. If you were to lighten up the Kelpie itself, just a big brush gently over it, a wee levels layer, bring the mid-tones up, black it out, a big white brush just softly off, you would see so much more detail in all these wee, they're not studs obviously, but whatever they are, rivets it could be. And then it might blend in better because that's really burnt out up there. This wee bit of black cloud I quite like, darker cloud, because it's got some shape. And you might be able to bring through odd bits of this slightly darker just to give more texture to it. But it's very well seen. I mean, a lot of people might have just discarded that, oh, it's burnt out and that's it. But I do like it, and I like the idea that you've turned it into a mono so that you can use this piece, not discard it, but use it to create an image called Fire Breath. So if we move on to Barassi, and this is one of those skies that we saw this summer, those red skies. I found them quite frightening. It's amazing colour in the clouds and it's reflected in the water below. The image is a wee bit top heavy. There's an awful lot up at the top that's not adding to it. We've got all the colour in the water, we've got the colour in the cloud, and it's reflected up. But then beyond a certain level, there's maybe a tiny wee bit further up, but then we don't really need all that. So I would suggest a crop. Bring that top down till you've got 2/3 at the top, the horizon, and 1/3 below. And that would greatly strengthen the image. I love the fact that you can see the tiny wee wind farm right away in the distance. And the wee tooty lights, I think, oh, it's a big dog now. It really gives a sense of distance and just how far away you are and how deep that image is. So crop it down and that would really be very helpful. I now have to just let a dog out. 2 tips. And now we're moving on to You Naughty Boy.
Oh, sorry?
Naughty Boy. Oh, there he is now. It's not hard to imagine that the owner of this dog would not be looking forward to getting him home, especially if they were travelling by car. I think the dog's face is fantastic. He's sort of saying, well, I'm happy. And he probably thinks that he looks very cute with the yellow flower draped round him. He's well placed in the image, but dropping the contrast slightly on the background, I think, would allow him to stand out even more. Once again, we've got some very strong greens on the right-hand side. The greens on the left-hand side are fine, but some of those greens on the right-hand side could just do come down a wee bit. I think lifting the mid-tones on the dog himself would maybe help him stand out, but maybe he's just too dirty to be white. I think he may have been slightly sharpened, which would be fine for printing, but for a digital, you don't want it to be too sharp. But I really loved the face, the eyes, the sort of look and say, so what? I'm happy. I think it's well handled, well composed, and I think he's a handsome wee fellow, and that one gets highly commended. Now we're moving on to Roxy. I happen to have a whippet called Roxy who's now come over and is looking at me as much saying, you wanted me? So I think a good depth of field has been used here to throw out the background. The background's really well diffused, but we still have a hint that there's an environment beyond them, and we can imagine it might be a natural environment. Closing the aperture slightly might have kept his back in focus, and that foot, the foot up on the right at the moment, it might just have held that. Even one stop would have helped. So, as has been mentioned before, you'll be fed up hearing, but we do read from left to right, and at the moment he's going from right to left. So we go in, we look at his eye, and we go down, we come back up. And we do eventually come to the slightly out of focus claw. So if the image were to be flipped, then we would read from his good foot right up to that eye, which is amazing. It's full of detail, and it's the most beautiful colour. And the nostril, the wee ear or breathing, I don't know what that hole in his head is, but it's so sharp, you feel as if you could put your finger down and get jagged by it. But a wee flip and maybe darken down the base to let him stand out a bit more. Lovely image, and that was commended. Now we're on to Splashtown. Now, trying to work out how this has been achieved has been half the fun of looking at this image. It almost appears like it's an alien, like it's in outer space, like it's some sort of weird jellyfish. Well, I mean, I've thought of it as so many things. There's a strange anomaly on the side of the neck. If you think of the top as a mushroom and then the neck, there's about halfway down. It could be a reflection, or it could be a distortion. I'm just not quite sure what it is, but I keep going back to it because it seems to spoil this almost symmetry of it. The law of physics appear to have been broken by the upside down nature of the mushroom-shaped entry point. So it could be assumed that the image has been flipped vertically, and the bubbles appear almost as a constellation. So it could be a creature from outer space. And the blue lights, the trail of those mysterious blue lights, I mean, who knows what it is? An intriguing image, but I'm really not sure what to make of it. It's been well handled, it's been fairly well composed, but what it is, I really don't know, but it did intrigue me, that one. Now we're on to Mr. Speaker, the ayes have it. And I'll just let the dog back in. Right, the ayes have it. Perhaps this is a political statement or a comment in the eye of the goose. I'll take it as a comment in the eye of the goose. The eye is quite stunning, and there is great contact with the photographer. It's almost as if the goose has sort of looked to the side and thought, okay, take my picture. The colours appear very strong, and the blue and the blue of the eye and the red around it may have been enhanced, which I don't think was necessary because it's so sharp and would benefit from maybe a more natural appearance. Once again, we've got that yellow in the background, the greeny yellow. So I would take, in fact, I think what I might do with this image is take the whole saturation down. You just do it at master opacity and take it all down a bit. And then it would, you'll be a much, much more natural looking image. Once again, try flipping the image horizontally to see if it has more impact. There's very good detail in the feathers and the beak, and especially on the tongue. To get more detail into the head, more shape into the head, you could lower the mid-tones. But just on parts of the head, you lower the mid-tones, black it all out, and then just bring it through, perhaps just round the bottom of the chin, just behind the eye, and perhaps just down the back of the head, and down at the very, very bottom of the neck. And that would give it more structure and more shape and make it stronger. Now we're getting close to the end now, and we've got the sun going down. I think this is a lovely image, very reflective image. I also would suggest cropping in from the right up to just the edge of the gravestones. That would place the church on the left and put it in a stronger position. And there's a bit of white lightness behind one of the trees right on the right hand side, so that would get rid of that and that would be fine. I would also lighten the lower part, the headstones, and that ray of light coming through. It's a very peaceful, calm, relaxing image, and I really like the tones, and I think if that were lightened you would see more of the sandstone in the corner on the headstones. But a very well seen image, and a very difficult image to get exposed quite as well as that. Now, we're on to the new goes old. The new goes old. I think it should goes over old. It's obviously paving stones. I'm not sure which are old and which are new, because some of the stuff they put down nowadays, you know, this sort of oldie worldy stuff. It's a pattern shot. It's a pity the yellow hadn't carried on and been a bit stronger. If you know where this is, it's worth going back to, but this time, take it with a straight edge. That bit along the top with the top white band on it. Come out a bit, straighten that up, and have more of the curve coming through, because you've got nice juxtaposition of colours, of shapes. You've got the straight, you've got the small squares, you've got the big curve and the grey curve and this sort of mustardy curve. So there's a good pattern shot to be had in there. So I would definitely go back, take it again, straighten it up and make more of a definite pattern shot of it. Now that is the end of that part, and we're now going to move into the top images, and best beginners goes to sand sculpture. I think this is a very good capture. The child is maybe agreed to be buried, seems to be either falling asleep or starting to panic. I suspect he's starting to panic. A really good story in the image, which makes the viewer wonder what happened next. Did he completely bury him? Did the other one get out? Is he happy? Is he unhappy? It's pin sharp, and the concentration on the wee guy who's doing the burying, the burier, it can clearly be seen he is absolutely bent on burying that other little boy. The boys could be slightly lightened because they're a wee bit darker, and if you took some contrast out the background, it would definitely strengthen the image. So this, instead of being like, you know, the candid street photography that we often see, I would say this is candid beach photography, and it really makes the viewer smile. Well observed and well captured, and gets best beginner. Now we move on to third place, and in third place we have Magellanic, I'm not sure, maybe somebody could help me with the pronunciation of that one later on. This is where you miss people shouting at you. Now, I know it's Nile of Lewis, and these, I've seen these sea stacks, and they remind me of the 12 Apostles on the coast of Victorian Australia. But these stacks have a harshness about them, which their Australian counterparts don't have. I think the author has captured the splendour of the vista and may have used a slightly slower shutter speed to soften the swirling of the water round about them, which has been very effective indeed. The image is held in the bottom left-hand corner by the top of the cliff, and the eye is led from there all the way around, and you see every single detail on the cliff. There's almost like a cave halfway around. Oh, I wonder what's that? And then you're taken right out to the wee islet that sits out on its own. The only thing I would say is the sky is very bright, and if that sky were taken down, mid-tones down, just in the sky, you would get so much more detail in that sky. And I think it's a lovely image. I think the details are fantastic, and that one received third place. And we're on to Lady Erin. I think this is a beautiful image of a beautiful young lady. The lighting has been well handled, and it allows the natural tones, even their freckles, to blossom and show through. Her eyes are compelling, and they really hold the eyes of the viewer. You're kind of drawn into it. The one thing I would say is the flower is quite large, and perhaps a smaller, posy type bouquet would have been more suitable. The tilt of her head shows of her neck, and she's a beautifully shaped chin and jawline coming up there. Her hair just falls very naturally, and the bit falling sort of slightly across the face, although it casts a shadow, it does not come onto the eye. I think it's a very competent portrait, well lit and well executed, and although the young lady is dressed up and has probably been asked to pose, her character still manages to come shining through with those compelling eyes, and Lady Erin was second. And the winning image is Diablo. Oh, Diablo was the winner as soon as I laid eyes on him, to be honest. He's deigned to pose for a short time, but his eyes tell us that he's in charge and he'll sit just as long as he wants. The detail on his coat is super, and also in his whiskers and his ears. The ears, the tips of the ears, it's absolutely fantastic. Every tiny hair is there, and the coat on his chest is beautiful, and his whiskers and his wee nose, the leather, the nose leather is beautiful. You can see every tiny detail. The only thing I would be tempted to slightly lighten the fur, just on his left hand shoulder, because it's a wee bit darker, and I'm sure there is detail still in there to come out. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, he may have been taken in the same surroundings as some of the other images due to the similarity of the background and the lighting. However, whilst this is a sort of style, it's a sort of formulaic type of photography, it can take away the character of the person or the animal, but in this case you could not take away the character of that cat. And Diablo just shines out saying, I'll sit as long as I want because I'm in charge. And I think he's absolutely fantastic and a very worthy winner.
Thank you very much, Mary. All right. That's superb.
We're
Before
back.
thank you, Mary. Before we carry on, I'll just give the results of the images tonight. Starting off with the best beginner, Ross Haffel for sand sculpture. The commended was Ian Mortimer, Iridescent Insect. Shane Kelly, Dumfries House. Paul Kelly, Out of the Dust. Alan Campbell, Ice Flow. Kevin Thorne, Blue. Pete Haywood, Decommissioned. Michelle Campbell, Water. Robert Walk, McCarty Ad. Clive Watkins, Feed Me. David Spielman, Painting the Battlements. And Kevin Thorne, Roxy. Highly commended was Ian Johnston, Clug. Clive Watkins, Reflector. Scott Bradford, Andrea. David Spielman, Dog Tired. Pete Haywood, Jews Harp from January Man. Michelle Campbell, Lauren. Ian Mortimer, Naughty Boy. In third place was Alan Campbell. I wouldn't even pronounce that, Alan. I'll leave that to you. Second place, Ian Mortimer, Lady Erin. And in first place, Michelle Campbell with the A-blow. Well done, everybody. Can I just hand you over to Clive? Or, well, 1 second, Clive, before that. Mary, we forwarded your payment into your bank, okay?
Oh, thank you.
Did you get that?
Did you wait till the very end?
Aye, that's it. Keep in suspense, Mary.
Well done, Mary.
Clive will just say a few
Well done, Mary.
parting words. Yes, well done.
Thank you, Mary, for another wonderful evening of judging. Obviously, in unusual circumstances, we're so used to having you at the clubhouse and getting to see you in person and having a good chat over a coffee at half time. It's been obviously a little bit unusual this time round. Hopefully, this won't go on for too much longer. But as usual, a very insightful, very forensic analysis of all our photographs, finding details and improvements to be made in all sorts of places that, you know, some of them, it's certainly something I would go away and try. Lots of technical detail as well for those of us that use Photoshop to go and have a look at and to try some of these sliders again in the curves adjustments, level adjustments and the various layers. So lots of really good information. And as usual, I encourage everybody to listen to what Mary has said, to go back and to try some of these things on your images, because the only way you guys are going to get better and to get into those top 3 places, and congratulations to the top 3 tonight and the commendeds and highly commendeds, all did a great job. But if the others and those guys want to improve, then you need to listen to what people like Mary are telling you about how you can improve your images. Go away and practice some of these things. It's the only way you'll get better is to practice what people like Mary who have done well in salons and competitions across the country and worldwide. You know, this is really good, strong advice. And, you know, the time and attention that it takes a judge to go through that many images and to come up with these thoughtful and insightful comments, it's a lot of effort. So I really like everybody to put their hands together and extend a warm Irving Camera Club thank you to Mary. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Could you shut them dogs up?
You talking to me, Ian Mortimer? Can I just say one thing to one of your members, David Spellman? David, I didn't know, obviously I didn't know whose images were whose. You have so improved. Well done, young man.
That's thanks to Irving Camera Club. The amount of tuition I've had is brilliant.
Well, fantastic. And keep it up, Irving Camera Club.
Well done, everybody tonight. A good selection of images, I think. I think Mary, you'd agree with that. A good selection of different topics and different styles. Great to see.
You're still the best judge in Ayrshire, Mary.
Who said that?
Me. By a mile. By a mile.
Did he get an award? Take it away.
He's getting kicked out of the club tomorrow.
Mary, can I ask you a wee question just for a point of clarification?
Yes.
See when you say flip an image, because we read from left to right.
Yes.
We also read from top to bottom. So some of the images you were saying slip to flip, put the focal point to the bottom left-hand corner.
No, you don't. You don't need to. If I said flip, I always mean, unless I state it's vertical, I always mean flip horizontally.
Yeah, but if you flipped it horizontal, it took the lead into the bottom left-hand corner in a couple that you said flip. And
yeah, but it would be in the right, the bottom. Give me the image. You know what one it was?
I'm not sure what one it was. No.
All right.
Was it the birds?
The birds. The birds.
You know.
Might be my bird, my blue tits on the stick. What Ian's saying is going from the top to the bottom of the page, and if you flip it,
yes. If it was sitting that way, you would flip it, and then it would be that way. But the actual focal point hasn't moved. It's your lead-in line that's moving.
No.
Same with the lizard.
It was sitting. Hold on. Wait a minute. It was sitting.
Looks like you're doing karate.
So if you flipped it, it was sitting that way. So you were going from the bottom.
You're flipping it. You're flipping it like from there to there. You know, it's that way. It's not. You don't flip it that way, up and down vertically. What is? You've got me thinking now.
The key thing here is flip your images and see whether it looks better to you or not. And at the end of the day, you know what will happen? You'll flip it and the judge will say, I wish you'd flipped it the other way. So you can't. Give it a go and see what, just try it and see what you think. And if you like it, better flipped, then flip it. But if you don't try it, you won't know.
And get rid of your white borders.
Oh, yes, please.
I'm guilty of that.
Oh, yes, please. Some people had some very strong white borders on, and it was unfortunate because your eye does go to the brightest bit, and to be honest, they were slightly distracting. I'm going to just here's edit, transform, flip horizontally. Yes, right. I'm wondering if you could, if I turn that around.
You can share your screen. There, you can share your screen. See at the bottom of the screen, there's a green button that says share screen. You're not on Zoom there, are you? Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Right. So what I did was edit, flip horizontally.
So you're now reading from the bottom left-hand corner.
Yes. If you read a book, you start at the left-hand side and you read towards the right.
But you also start at the top. Flip again. You're now starting at the bottom.
Yes, you're coming in, the way you would read a book, you're coming in from the left and you're going up. I'm not talking about going that way, I'm just talking about the whole basis of left to right.
Yeah.
Our eyes by nature, the way we're trained to read, we read from. If you came from the eastern parts of the world, you would read from right to left, and as the Chinese do. But we don't, we read that way. So therefore, if you flip, I've got two mice going here.
You've answered my question because I was wondering about the same aspect of reading from top to bottom. So I think, but you've answered the question.
I think Ian's just been flippant.
Who said that?
Enough already. Let's stop it.
You're using the word.
Who said that?
You're using the word read to assume words.
I think Alan
we're not talking words here. We're talking about how your eye moves.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I should have made that clear. As a child, you are taught to read, and you're taught to read from left to right.
Yep.
And in the West, that's the way that we read. It's only perhaps China and these countries over in the Far East that they read from the back of a book to the front of the book, and they read from right to left. So when we get images into international salons and you see some of the Chinese images, it's quite obvious that they read from right to left because of the whole composition of the image.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you get a digital image from China and you actually flip it, we find it easier to read, easier to understand because of the way it is. When we flipped it.
What your eyes and brain are trained to see.
Yes, exactly. And make it easier for yourself and for the judge to give you better marks for putting it in an easier way to read, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If anybody has any serious questions, I hear you're having a catch up about this in a few weeks. if you have any serious questions, but Clive will be able to answer them all. I know he will. If there are any that are very specific, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Okay?
Thank you, Mary.
That's good. Thank you very much.
Well done, Mary.
Excellent.
Excellent.
I've lost my buttons now, wrong. I've got 2 computers and 2 mice in the go and I can't find what's going on. Well, I'll say good night to you first, people, and thank you so much again for allowing me to have a look at your images, and I hope I've been at least a little bit of help to somebody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll now say good night.
Thank you,
Good
Mary.
night.
Bye, Mary.
Bye.